Blue lights tore through the frozen night like blades, and Dr. Maya Hartwell, decorated Army surgeon turned trauma specialist, stood handcuffed on the shoulder of Interstate 77 while a patient flatlined 12 miles away. The state trooper pinning her wrists had no idea the woman he was arresting had saved 43 lives under mortar fire in Kandahar. He didn't care that her phone was exploding with calls from Richmond Memorial Hospital. He saw a black woman driving 90 in scrubs, speaking with military precision, and decided she was lying. 10 minutes ago, she'd been the only hope for a dying heart. Now she was face down on frozen asphalt, and somewhere in the dark, a countdown clock was running out. Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something. Stay with me until the very end. Watch how justice finds its way even when the system tries to bury it. And when it's over, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, because I want to see just how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The call had come at 11:47 p.m., shattering the silence of Maya Hartwell's townhouse in the Dilworth neighborhood. She'd been asleep for less than an hour when her phone lit up with the hospital's emergency code. Level 1 cardiac, vascular specialist required, ETA critical. Maya didn't hesitate. She was out of bed, into scrubs, and behind the wheel of her black Honda Accord in under 4 minutes. 15 years in the Army had taught her how to move when seconds mattered. She'd been a field surgeon in Afghanistan and Iraq, operating in tents while rockets screamed overhead, keeping soldiers alive with nothing but her hands and willpower. Now she was the senior vascular trauma specialist at Richmond Memorial, one of only 3 nurses in North Carolina certified in advanced combat cardiac stabilization. When they called her at midnight, it meant someone was dying and no one else could stop it. She punched the hospital's address into her GPS. Unnecessary, she knew every route, but protocol mattered. Her military medical bag sat in the passenger seat. Tourniquets, chest seals, hemostatic gauze, IV kits, tools she'd used in deserts and mountains, tools she prayed she'd never need on American highways. The roads were empty and black. Frost glittered on the asphalt like broken glass. Maya kept her speed at 85, high enough to matter, controlled enough to be safe. Her headlights carved tunnels through the darkness. The dashboard clock glowed 11:53. She had 17 minutes to cover 14 miles. Doable. Tight, but doable. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced down. Dr. Lian Zhao, head of the cardiac unit. Maya answered on speaker. "Maya, where are you?" 12 miles out. I'm moving." "Move faster." Zhao's voice was stripped of its usual calm. "We've got a 52-year-old female in V-fib. Massive anterior infarction. She coded twice already. We shocked her back, but she's circling. We need you here now." "Who is she?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is you're the only one in this state who can thread a femoral line under cardiac arrest without killing her. Get here." The line went dead. Maya's jaw tightened. She pressed the accelerator. 90, 95. The Honda's engine hummed smooth and cold. She'd done this before. Raced against death, moved through chaos like water through cracks. In Kandahar, she'd once sprinted 200 yards under sniper fire to pull a sergeant out of a burning Humvee, then operated on him in the back of a moving truck. She had not let him die. She would not let this patient die either. That's when she saw the lights, blue and red, flashing hard in her rearview mirror. Close, too close. A Virginia State Police cruiser, light bar blazing, closing the gap fast. Maya's stomach dropped. She checked her speedometer, 98. She eased off the gas, flipped on her hazard lights, and started slowing. She couldn't afford this. Not now. Not tonight. But she also couldn't afford to run. So she did what she'd been trained to do. Stay calm, follow procedure, and pray the officer was reasonable. She pulled onto the shoulder. Gravel crunched under her tires. The cruiser stopped 20 feet behind her, lights still spinning, turning the night into a strobing nightmare. Maya rolled down her window, placed both hands on the wheel, and waited. Cold air poured into the car. Her breath fogged in the cabin. The dashboard clock read 11:58. The officer took his time. Maya watched him in the mirror, tall, white, mid-40s, moving with the slow arrogance of someone who enjoyed making people wait. When he finally reached her window, he shone a flashlight directly into her face. License and registration. Maya didn't flinch. Officer, I'm Dr. Maya Hartwell, senior trauma nurse at Richmond Memorial Hospital. I'm responding to a level 1 cardiac emergency. I have my hospital credentials, my medical license, and my military ID. I need to... License, registration, now. His voice was flat, bored. He wasn't listening. Maya felt the first cold thread of dread coil in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. She reached slowly for her purse, narrating every movement. I'm reaching for my wallet. It's in my bag on the passenger seat. Hands where I can see them. She froze. I need to get my license. You just asked for it. Don't get smart with me. He leaned closer, and Maya smelled coffee and something sour. His nameplate read Sergeant D. Brennan. Step out of the vehicle. Officer Brennan, please listen. Sergeant Brennan, and I set out. Maya's phone buzzed again. She glanced down. Richmond Memorial, 4th call. Brennan saw the movement. Hands on the wheel. That's the hospital. They're calling because someone is dying and I'm the only... I don't care if it's the president. Hands on the wheel. Maya placed her hands back on the steering wheel, fingers spread, and forced herself to breathe. In Iraq, she'd once talked down a 19-year-old private who'd been hit with shrapnel and was screaming that he was going to die. She'd used her voice like a scalpel, calm, steady, unbreakable. She tried that now. Sergeant, my name is Dr. Maya Hartwell. I am a trauma specialist. There is a patient in cardiac arrest at Richmond Memorial Hospital, and I am the only medical professional in this region certified to stabilize her. If I don't get there in the next 8 minutes, she will die. I was speeding, I admit that, and I will accept any citation you want to issue. But please, let me go save her first, and I will come back to the station tonight and handle this properly. Brennan stared at her. For a moment, Maya thought she saw something shift in his expression. Doubt, maybe, or calculation. Then it hardened again. Step out of the car. Last time I'm asking. Maya's phone rang again. Brennan's hand dropped to his belt. Not his gun, his taser. She stepped out. The cold hit her like a fist. She was still in scrubs, thin cotton pants and a short-sleeved top, and the temperature had dropped below freezing. Her breath came out in white clouds. Brennan made her walk to the back of the car, placed her hands on the trunk, and kicked her feet apart. Stay there. He went back to his cruiser. Maya heard him on the radio, his voice muffled. She looked down the highway, empty in both directions, just black asphalt and distant trees skeletal against the sky. Her phone buzzed in the car. Again. Again. She counted the seconds. 30, 60, 90. When Brennan came back, he had a ticket book. You were doing 98 and a 65, reckless driving. That's a misdemeanor in Virginia. I know. Write the ticket. Let me go. You got an attitude problem, doctor? He said the word like it was an insult. Maya looked him in the eye. No, Sergeant. I have a dying patient. You got proof of that? She gestured toward the car. My phone. Call the hospital. They'll confirm everything. Brennan smirked. Or you're just trying to get out of a ticket. That's when Maya felt the cold turn into something else, something sharp and familiar. She'd felt it before, in a dozen different forms. The lieutenant who didn't think a woman could handle field surgery. The supply officer who made her wait 3 hours for requisitioned blood while soldiers bled out. The colonel who questioned her after she saved 6 men in a single night, asking if she was sure she'd followed procedure. She knew what this was. Check my credentials, she said quietly. They're in my bag. Hospital ID, medical license, military discharge papers, everything. Brennan looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked to the passenger side, opened the door, and pulled out her bag. He dumped it on the hood. Wallet, keys, pens, tampons, her hospital badge, her medical kit, all of it scattered across the cold metal. He picked through it like he was sorting garbage. He held up her hospital ID, barely glanced at it, and tossed it aside. Anyone can fake these. Call the hospital. I'll do my job. You do yours, which right now is standing there and shutting up. Maya's hands curled into fists. She forced them open. In Kandahar, She'd once held a soldier's heart in her hands, literally held it, massaging it manually after a blast tore open his chest, and kept him alive for 11 minutes until the surgeon arrived. She had not broken then. She would not break now. But the clock was breaking. It was 12:04 a.m. Another vehicle approached from the south, a county sheriff's deputy, slowing as it passed, then pulling onto the shoulder ahead of them. A young woman stepped out, mid-20s, blonde ponytail, sharp eyes. Her badge read Deputy J. Morgan. "Everything okay here, Sarge?" Brennan didn't look up. "Traffic stop. I've got it." Morgan walked closer, her gaze moving from Brennan to Maya to the scattered contents of the medical bag. She stopped when she saw the military discharge papers, the trauma kit, the hospital badge with Maya's face on it. "Ma'am, are you Dr. Hartwell?" Maya nodded. "Yes. I'm a trauma nurse at Richmond Memorial. I'm responding to a cardiac emergency." Morgan's eyes widened. "You're the vascular specialist. You know me?" "My sister works in your unit, Casey Morgan. She talks about you all the time." Morgan turned to Brennan. "Sarge, she's legit. We need to let her go." Brennan's face went dark. "I'm handling this." "She's got a patient dying." "I said I'm handling it." Morgan hesitated, and Maya saw the calculation happen, rank versus right. Then Morgan stepped back, her face tight with frustration. "Yes, sir." Maya's phone rang again. This time Brennan walked over, picked it up from the front seat, and answered it himself. "Yeah?" He listened for a moment. Uh-huh. And how do I know this isn't just her friend covering for her?" Another pause. "Right. Well, I've got a reckless driver here who's spinning stories, so I'm going to verify a few things first. You'll get your nurse when I'm done." He hung up. Maya felt something crack inside her chest. Not panic, she didn't do panic, but something close to it. Rage, maybe. Or despair. She'd spent 15 years saving lives, and now she was watching one slip away because a man with a badge couldn't see past his own ego. "Please," she said, and hated the sound of her own voice. "Please, just call my supervisor. Call the hospital administrator. Call anyone. Verify my identity and let me go." Brennan leaned against her car, arms crossed. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to run your plates, check for warrants, make sure your story holds up. If it does, you'll get a ticket and a court date. If it doesn't, you'll get arrested. Either way, you're going to learn that lying to a state trooper is a bad idea." "I'm not lying. Everyone says that." He walked back to his cruiser. Maya stood there, shaking, not from cold, though she was freezing, but from the sheer powerlessness of it. She'd commanded surgical teams under fire. She'd made life and death calls in seconds. She'd held the line when everyone else was running, and now she couldn't do anything but stand on the side of a highway and watch a woman die. Morgan stepped closer, her voice low. "I'm sorry. I tried." "I know. For what it's worth, I believe you." Maya nodded. Words felt useless now. The minutes crawled. 12:07, 12:09, 12:11. Maya's phone kept ringing. Brennan ignored it. Morgan stood nearby, shifting her weight, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge her superior again. The highway stayed empty. The cold deepened. And somewhere 12 miles south, a heart was failing. At 12:14, another set of headlights appeared. This time it was a black SUV, moving fast, no lights. It slowed, pulled onto the shoulder behind Brennan's cruiser, and stopped. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, black, early 50s, wearing a dark suit and a face carved from stone. He walked straight to Brennan. "What's going on here?" Brennan looked up, annoyed. "Police business." "Move along." The man pulled out a badge. "Commander Vincent Cross, Richmond Police Department. I asked you a question." Brennan straightened. "Traffic stop. Reckless driving. I'm processing it." Cross looked past him to Maya, then to the items scattered on the hood, then back to Brennan. "How long has she been here?" 20 minutes. She's a trauma nurse. Richmond Memorial has been calling my office for the last 15 minutes trying to locate her. You aware of that?" Brennan's jaw tightened. She claims she's responding to an emergency. I'm verifying. Verifying. Cross stepped closer. You've had 20 minutes. What exactly are you verifying? Whether or not she's lying. Cross pulled out his phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered, tight with stress. Commander Cross? Dr. Zhao, I'm on I-77 with Dr. Hartwell. Confirm her status. She's our senior vascular trauma specialist. We have a critical cardiac patient in VFib who needs immediate stabilization. Maya is the only person in this state who can thread a femoral arterial line under arrest conditions without causing a fatal embolism. We've been trying to reach her for 18 minutes. Where the hell is she? Cross looked at Brennan. She's been detained by a state trooper who thinks she's lying. There was a long silence on the other end. When Zhao spoke again, her voice was ice. If that patient dies because of this, I will personally see to it that everyone involved is held accountable. Let her go. Now. Cross hung up. He turned to Brennan, and his voice dropped to something quiet and deadly. Uncuff her. Give her back her belongings. Let her go. Brennan's face flushed. This is a state matter. You don't have jurisdiction. I have a dying woman and a qualified medical professional being illegally detained. You want to argue jurisdiction? We can do that. After the patient is stable and the lawyers are present. Right now you're going to step aside, or I'm going to move you aside. Choose. For a moment, Maya thought Brennan might actually fight it. His hand twitched toward his belt. Morgan tensed. Cross didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, radiating authority like heat from a furnace. Brennan stepped back. Fine, but this isn't over. Cross ignored him. He walked to Maya, his expression softening. Dr. Hartwell, I'm sorry. Get in your car. In. I'll escort you. Maya didn't waste time on words. She grabbed her bag, threw everything back into it, and got behind the wheel. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline, cold, rage, all of it catching up at once. Cross leaned down to her window. Follow me. Don't stop for anything. He was back in his SUV in seconds. Lights flashed. Not police lights, but hazards. He pulled onto the highway, and Maya followed. In her rearview mirror, she saw Brennan standing beside his cruiser, watching them go. Morgan was already walking back to her own vehicle, shaking her head. The dashboard clock read 12:19. Maya had been delayed for 32 minutes. 32 minutes of a patient coding, of a heart struggling, of time running out. She pressed the accelerator and stayed on Cross's tail as they rocketed south, the night blurring past, the hospital 12 miles away and closing fast. Her phone rang. Dr. Zhao. Maya? I'm 2 minutes out. She's still alive, barely. We've shocked her 4 times. We're losing her. I'm coming. Maya ended the call and gripped the wheel tighter. The Honda's engine roared. Cross's SUV carved through the darkness ahead of her, and Maya followed like she was chasing a lifeline. The highway lights blurred into streaks. Her breath came fast and shallow. She'd been trained for this, trained to move through chaos, to operate under pressure, to ignore fear and exhaustion and focus on the mission. The mission was simple. Get there. Save her. Don't fail. At 12:21, the hospital appeared on the horizon, a massive complex of glass and steel, blazing with light against the black sky. Cross didn't slow. He drove straight into the emergency bay, and Maya was out of her car before it fully stopped, sprinting toward the entrance with her bag slamming against her hip. The automatic doors hissed open. She ran through the lobby, past the security desk, past the waiting families, straight to the elevator. A nurse saw her coming and held the doors. Trauma 3. They're waiting. Maya stepped in, and the doors closed. The elevator climbed. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished steel, wild-eyed, pale, still shaking. She forced herself to breathe, to focus, to become the surgeon she used to be, the one who moved through gunfire and saved lives while the world burned. The doors opened on the 3rd floor. Maya ran. She hit the trauma wing at a dead sprint, shouldered through the double doors, and saw them immediately. Dr. Zhao, 2 residents, 3 nurses, all clustered around a bed where a woman lay dying. Monitors screamed. The crash cart stood ready. Someone was doing chest compressions. The woman's face was gray, her lips blue, her eyes half open and empty. Zhao looked up and saw Maya. Relief broke across her face like dawn. About damn time. Maya dropped her bag, snapped on gloves, and stepped to the bed. The noise of the room faded. The exhaustion, the cold, the rage, all of it vanished. She was in the zone now, the place where her hands knew what to do before her brain caught up, where instinct and training became one. She looked down at the patient. 52, just like Zhao had said. Brown hair streaked with gray. A wedding ring on her left hand. And a face Maya had seen before, not in person, but in a photograph on Commander Cross's desk when she'd given a lecture at the police academy 6 months ago. This was his wife. The realization hit like a punch, but Maya didn't stop moving. She reached for the ultrasound, positioned it over the femoral artery, and started mapping the insertion point. Her voice came out calm, controlled. The voice of someone who'd done this 100 times under worse conditions. I need a 16-gauge catheter, guide wire, and dilator. Prep the arterial line. Someone get me manual BP every 30 seconds. And I need absolute silence unless I ask a question. Understood? The room snapped into focus. Hands moved. Equipment appeared. The monitors kept screaming, but Maya had learned long ago how to hear past the noise. She positioned the needle, felt for the pulse. Weak, thready, barely there, and began the insertion. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. In Kandahar, she'd once done this same procedure in a sandstorm with nothing but a headlamp and a prayer. This was cleaner, quieter, safer. This was something she could do. The needle slid in. Blood flashed back. She advanced the guide wire, felt it thread smoothly, and exhaled. First step done. Dilator! It appeared in her hand. She worked quickly, expanding the pathway, making room for the catheter. The patient's heart was still fibrillating, still struggling, but Maya was buying them time. Time for the drugs to work. Time for the shocks to land. Time for a miracle. She inserted the catheter, secured it, and connected the arterial line. Pressure readings flooded the monitor. Low, dangerously low, but present. She looked up at Zhao. I'm in. Push the epi. Charge to 200. Zhao moved like lightning. The defibrillator whined. Maya stepped back, hands up, watching the monitor. The patient's body arced as the shock hit. Once. Twice. The line on the screen jumped, spiked, and then a rhythm. Weak, irregular, but a rhythm. We've got sinus, one of the residents called out. Maya leaned back in, checked the catheter, adjusted the flow. Stabilize her. I want pressors running, continuous monitoring, and a cardiology consult within 5 minutes. If she drops again, call me immediately. Zhao looked at her, eyes bright. You did it. Maya shook her head. We did it. And we're not done. She's stable, but she's fragile. Next 6 hours are critical. She stepped back from the bed, pulled off her gloves, and let herself breathe. The adrenaline was starting to fade, and in its place came exhaustion, deep, bone-crushing exhaustion. Her hands were shaking again. Her legs felt like water. But the woman on the bed was alive, and that was all that mattered. Commander Cross appeared in the doorway, his face pale and drawn. He looked at the monitors, at his wife's face, at the steady beep of her heartbeat. Then he looked at Maya. Is she... She's stable, Maya said quietly. We got her back. The next few hours will tell us more, but right now, she's fighting, and she's strong. Cross closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked like he might collapse. Then he straightened, walked over, and extended his hand. Thank you. Maya shook it. Just doing my job. No, his voice cracked. You saved her life. After what happened tonight, after that bastard delayed you, you still got here and saved her. I don't have words for that. Maya looked him in the eye. Then don't use words. Use action. That trooper put your wife's life at risk because he couldn't be bothered to listen. Make sure it doesn't happen to someone else. Cross nodded slowly. I will. I promise you that. He turned and walked into the room, moving to his wife's bedside. Maya watched him take her hand, saw his shoulders shake, and knew she'd done what she came to do. Dr. Zhao appeared beside her, carrying a cup of coffee. You look like hell. I feel like hell. Go home. We've got this. Maya shook her head. I'll stay until she's out of the woods. Maya, I'll stay. Zhao sighed. Fine. But at least sit down before you fall down. Maya found a chair in the hallway and collapsed into it. The coffee was bitter and too hot, but she drank it anyway. Her phone buzzed. Messages from the hospital, from colleagues, from people she hadn't heard from in years. News traveled fast in the medical community. Word was already spreading. The trauma nurse who got detained on the highway, who fought through a traffic stop to save a life, who made it just in time. But Maya didn't care about any of that. She cared about the woman in that room, the one whose heart was beating again because Maya had refused to give up. She cared about making sure it kept beating. At 2:47 a.m., Dr. Zhao came back out. She's holding. Vitals are improving. I think we're through the worst of it. Maya nodded. Good. You should go home. Soon. But she didn't. She stayed in that hallway until dawn, watching the monitors through the window, ready to move if anything changed, because that's what she did. That's who she was. A soldier who became a healer, a woman who held the line when everyone else stepped back. A professional who didn't know how to quit. And when the sun finally rose over Richmond Memorial Hospital, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Maya stood up, stretched her aching body, and walked back into the trauma unit one more time. Commander Cross was still there, sitting beside his wife, holding her hand. He looked up when Maya entered. She's going to make it, he said quietly. I know. Because of you. Maya didn't answer. She just checked the monitors one more time, confirmed the readings, and nodded. Then she walked out, down the hallway, into the elevator, through the lobby, and out into the cold morning air. Her car was still parked in the emergency bay where she'd left it. She got in, started the engine, and sat there for a moment, letting the warmth build. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. She ignored it. Right now she just wanted to go home, take a shower, and sleep for 12 hours. But before she could put the car in gear, her phone rang. Not the hospital this time. A number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. Dr. Hartwell? Yes? This is Captain Linda Reeves, Virginia State Police Internal Affairs. I'm calling about an incident that occurred early this morning involving Sergeant Daniel Brennan. We'd like to ask you some questions. Maya closed her eyes. Here it comes, she thought. The part where they try to bury it. The part where they protect their own and make it go away. I'll answer your questions, she said, but I want everything on record, and I want a lawyer present. There was a pause. That's your right, Doctor. We'll arrange it, but I want you to know this isn't going away. What Brennan did tonight was unacceptable, and we're going to make sure he answers for it. Maya felt something shift in her chest. Hope, maybe, or just exhaustion finally giving way to relief. When do you want to meet? As soon as possible. We're taking this seriously. Tomorrow. I need to sleep first. Tomorrow works. Thank you, Dr. Hartwell. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry you went through that. Maya hung up and sat there in the quiet car, watching the sun climb higher. She thought about Sergeant Brennan, about the way he'd looked at her, about the contempt in his voice. She thought about all the time she'd been dismissed, underestimated, pushed aside. And she thought about the woman upstairs whose heart was beating because Maya had refused to be stopped. She put the car in gear and drove home through the morning light, past the frozen highways and empty streets, past the place where she'd been detained and humiliated, past all of it. Because she was still here, still standing, still fighting, and the story wasn't over yet. The story broke before Maya even made it home. Someone had recorded the traffic stop. Not the police dash cam. Those could be buried, edited, lost in bureaucratic mazes. This was a civilian recording, shot from a distance by a truck driver who'd pulled over to sleep and woke up to flashing lights. He'd filmed the whole thing on his phone. Maya standing in the cold in scrubs, Brennan dumping her medical bag on the hood, the scattered credentials, the phone ringing over and over while he ignored it. 26 minutes of footage, raw and damning. By the time Maya pulled into her driveway at 7 a.m., the video had been uploaded to 6 different platforms and shared 40,000 times. By noon, it had 2 million views. By evening, it was on the national news. Maya didn't know any of this yet. She stumbled into her townhouse, kicked off her shoes, and made it as far as the couch before exhaustion hit like a freight train. She was asleep in seconds, still in her scrubs, her phone buzzing itself to death on the coffee table. She woke to pounding on her front door. The clock on the wall read 3:17 p.m. Maya's mouth tasted like copper and old coffee. Her body ached in places she'd forgotten existed. The pounding continued, urgent and relentless. She pulled herself upright, stumbled to the door, and checked the peephole. A woman in a gray suit stood on the porch, holding a briefcase and looking thoroughly annoyed. Maya opened the door halfway. "Can I help you?" "Dr. Hartwell, I'm Jessica Chen, legal counsel for the Virginia ACLU. We need to talk." Maya blinked. "I haven't even filed a complaint yet." "You don't need to. Half the country just watched you get humiliated by a state trooper while a patient was dying. Can I come in?" Maya stepped aside. Chen walked into the living room like she owned it, set her briefcase on the coffee table, and turned to face Maya with the intensity of a lawyer who'd scented blood in the water. "Have you seen the video?" "What video?" Chen pulled out her phone and handed it over. Maya watched herself standing in the cold, watched Brennan dump her belongings, watched him ignore call after call while she stood there shaking. The video quality was grainy but clear enough. You could see everything. Her hospital badge lying on the hood, her military discharge papers scattered in the wind. The way Brennan leaned against her car like he had all the time in the world. The comment section was a wildfire. "This is absolutely disgusting. She's trying to save a life and he's treating her like a criminal. If that patient died because of this cop, he should be charged with manslaughter. How many times does she have to say she's a doctor before he listens?" Notice how he didn't believe her credentials but would have probably let a white man in a suit go with a warning. Maya handed the phone back. Her hands were steady, but something cold was spreading through her chest. "How many people have seen this?" "As of 20 minutes ago, 4.3 million. It's trending on every platform. The hospital released a statement an hour ago confirming you saved Commander Cross's wife. The police union is scrambling, and Sergeant Brennan just got placed on administrative leave pending investigation." Maya sat down slowly. "Administrative leave? That's it?" "For now. But Internal Affairs is moving fast. They know this is a PR nightmare. They want to interview you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And before you go in there, I need you to understand something." Chen leaned forward, her voice sharp. "They're going to try to control the narrative. They'll say Brennan was doing his job, that he had no way to verify your story, that everything happened according to protocol. They'll make it sound like a tragic miscommunication instead of what it actually was, a power trip that nearly killed someone. So what do I do? You tell the truth. Every detail. Every call they ignored. Every credential they dismissed. Every second they wasted. And you let me handle the rest." Chen pulled a document from her briefcase. "This is a complaint I've already drafted. It names Brennan, the Virginia State Police, and their failure to establish protocols for medical emergency verification. If you sign it, we'll file it federal court and pursue this as a civil rights violation." Maya stared at the papers. "I just wanted to save a patient." "I know, but now you have a chance to save the next one, and the one after that. Because if we don't fix this, it'll happen again. Maybe to another doctor. Maybe to an EMT. Maybe to someone who doesn't make it in time." Maya thought about Commander Cross sitting beside his wife's bed, holding her hand while machines kept her alive. She thought about the 32 minutes Brennan had stolen, the minutes that could have been the difference between life and death. She thought about all the soldiers she'd saved in Afghanistan, and how none of them had ever questioned whether she was qualified to save them. She picked up the pen. "Where do I sign?" The next morning, Maya walked into the Virginia State Police headquarters wearing a navy blazer over her scrubs, her hair pulled back, her face carefully neutral. Chen walked beside her, heels clicking on tile, already radiating the kind of controlled aggression that made desk sergeants nervous. Captain Linda Reeves met them in a conference room on the third floor, a sparse space with gray walls, fluorescent lights, and a table that looked like it had survived decades of interrogations. Reeves was in her early 50s, black, with close-cropped hair and eyes that missed nothing. She shook Maya's hand firmly. "Dr. Hartwell, thank you for coming. Let's get this over with." They sat. Reeves placed a digital recorder on the table between them and pressed record. "This is Captain Linda Reeves, Internal Affairs, conducting an interview with Dr. Maya Hartwell regarding incident VSP-47-2026, occurring on Interstate 77 at approximately 23:50 hours on March 6th. Dr. Hartwell, you understand this interview is voluntary and you have the right to legal counsel?" "I understand. My attorney is present." Chen nodded, but said nothing. Reeves pulled out a file. "Walk me through what happened. Start from when you left your residence." Maya did. She kept her voice level, her account precise. She'd given debriefings before, after missions in Kandahar where things went sideways and people wanted to know who screwed up and how. She knew how to strip emotion from facts, how to make the timeline clean and clear. When she finished, Reeves was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Did Sergeant Brennan ever physically threaten you?" "He put his hand on his taser when I tried to answer my phone." "Did he draw it?" "No, but the threat was clear." Reeves made a note. "And you're certain you identified yourself as medical personnel immediately?" "Yes." "Multiple times?" "At least 6, maybe more. I lost count." "Did you raise your voice, use profanity, behave in any way that could be interpreted as aggressive?" Maya met her eyes. "I was calm, respectful, and professional. Even when he dumped my medical equipment on the ground and ignored a dying patient's hospital calling repeatedly." Chen shifted slightly, a movement that said careful, but Reeves just nodded. "I've reviewed Sergeant Brennan's report. He claims he had reasonable suspicion that you were fabricating the emergency to avoid a ticket. He states that he attempted to verify your credentials, but found inconsistencies." "What inconsistencies?" "He says your hospital ID appeared altered." Maya felt heat rise in her chest. "That's a lie. He also says you became verbally aggressive and refused to comply with his instructions." "Also a lie." Reeves tapped her pen against the file. "Here's the problem, Dr. Hartwell. It's your word against his. Without corroborating evidence," Chen slid a tablet across the table. "Video evidence, uploaded by a civilian witness. Time-stamped, geotagged, unedited. It shows everything." Reeves picked up the tablet and watched. Her expression didn't change, but Maya saw her jaw tighten, saw the muscle jump in her temple. When the video ended, Reeves set the tablet down carefully. "Where did you get this?" "It's public, posted online approximately 8 hours after the incident." "Has it been authenticated?" "We have the original file from the witness. Metadata intact. It's real." Reeves leaned back in her chair. For a long moment, she just looked at Maya, and Maya couldn't read her expression. Then she turned off the recorder. "Off the record," Reeves said quietly, "what Brennan did was inexcusable. He had multiple opportunities to verify your story and chose not to. He delayed critical medical care because of personal bias. If that patient had died, we'd be looking at manslaughter charges." "On the record," Chen said, "what are you going to do about it?" Reeves turned the recorder back on. "Sergeant Brennan is currently on administrative leave. Based on this interview and the video evidence, I'm recommending immediate termination and criminal charges for obstruction and reckless endangerment. The case will go to the district attorney's office by end of week." Maya felt something uncoil in her chest. Not relief, not yet, but the faint beginning of it. "What about the department?" Chen asked. "What changes are you implementing to make sure this doesn't happen again?" "That's above my pay grade." "Then get someone in here whose pay grade it is." Reeves held Chen's gaze for a beat, then stood. "Wait here." She left the room. Maya and Chen sat in silence. The fluorescent lights hummed. The building felt too quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. 10 minutes later, the door opened. A man in a superintendent's uniform walked in, late 50s, white, with the kind of face that looked permanently exhausted. His nameplate read, Superintendent R. Wallace. He sat down heavily. Dr. Hartwell, I'm Superintendent Wallace. I want to start by apologizing for what happened to you. I don't want an apology, Maya said. I want to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Wallace nodded. We're implementing immediate changes. Mandatory training on medical emergency protocols, verification procedures for medical personnel, body camera requirements for all traffic stops, and a civilian oversight board to review complaints. Chen pulled out a legal pad. I'll need all of that in writing, with timelines. You'll have it. And Brennan? Wallace's face hardened. He's done. We're terminating him today, and we're cooperating fully with the DA's investigation. If they charge him, we won't fight it. Maya looked at him. You're firing him because the video went viral. If it hadn't, this would have been buried. Wallace didn't flinch. Probably. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise, but the video did go viral, and now we have an opportunity to fix a broken system. I'm choosing to take it. That's not justice. That's damage control. Maybe. But the outcome is the same. Brennan's gone, protocols are changing, and the next doctor who gets pulled over will have protections you didn't have. I can't undo what happened to you, Dr. Hartwell, but I can try to make sure it's the last time it happens. Chen made note. Maya watched Wallace's face, looking for the lie, the angle, the escape route. She'd seen enough officers in her military career to know when someone was trying to protect their own. But Wallace looked tired and angry and something close to genuine. I'll believe it when I see it, Maya said finally. Fair enough. Wallace stood. Captain Reeves will keep you updated on Brennan's case. If you need anything from us, anything, you call me directly. He slid a business card across the table. My personal cell. He left. Reeves followed, leaving Maya and Chen alone again. Chen gathered her papers. That went better than expected. They're scared. Good. Fear drives change faster than compassion. Chen snapped her briefcase shut. The media is going to want to talk to you. I'd advise against it for now. Let the story breathe, let people stay angry, but eventually you'll need to speak publicly. I'm not interested in being famous. You already are. 4 million views and climbing. The question is whether you control the narrative or let someone else do it. Maya rubbed her temples. A headache was building behind her eyes, sharp and insistent. I need coffee. I need you focused, because this isn't over. Brennan's going to fight back. The Union will protect him, and there are going to be people, a lot of people, who side with him over you. Let them. Maya. Chen's voice softened. I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've seen cases like yours collapse because the victim got tired of fighting. Don't let that be you. Maya looked at her. I've operated on soldiers while mortar rounds landed 50 yards away. I've held a man's severed leg together with gauze and sheer stubbornness until medevac arrived. I'm not afraid of a fight. Chen smiled. Good. Because we're about to start one. The DA's office moved faster than anyone expected. By Friday afternoon, Sergeant Daniel Brennan was formally charged with obstruction of medical services, reckless endangerment, and official misconduct. The arraignment was set for the following Monday. News vans camped outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions at anyone who walked by. The video had been viewed 12 million times. Maya didn't go to the arraignment. She went back to work. Richmond Memorial welcomed her like a returning war hero. The staff gave her a standing ovation when she walked into the trauma unit Monday morning. Dr. Zhao hugged her, which was wildly out of character. Even the hospital administrator, a man Maya had spoken to maybe twice in 3 years, came down to shake her hand and tell her how proud the institution was to have her on staff. It felt surreal. Maya just wanted to check on her patients. Commander Cross's wife, Elena, was out of ICU and recovering in a private room on the cardiac floor. Maya stopped by during her lunch break. Elena was sitting up in bed, color back in her face, reading something on a tablet. She looked up when Maya entered and smiled. You must be Dr. Hartwell. Just checking in. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, but alive, thanks to you. Elena set the tablet aside. My husband told me what happened, what that officer put you through. Maya shrugged. I made it in time. That's what matters. It matters that you almost didn't, and it matters that you kept going even after they tried to stop you. Elena's voice cracked slightly. I have 3 kids. Teenagers. If you hadn't made it, if that bastard had delayed you just a little longer, they'd be planning my funeral right now. Maya sat down in the chair beside the bed. You're here. Your kids still have their mother. Focus on that. I am, but I'm also furious, and I want to help. Help how? Elena picked up her tablet and turned it around. On the screen was a crowdfunding page titled Justice for Dr. Hartwell. Legal Defense Fund. The goal was $50,000. The current total was $237,000. Maya stared. What is this? People want to support you. They want to make sure you can fight this without worrying about legal fees. My husband and I set it up yesterday. We figured you'd say no if we asked first, so we just did it. I can't accept this. Too late. The money's already in escrow. And before you argue, know that half of it is from police officers. Good ones who are sick of people like Brennan making them all look bad. Maya didn't know what to say. The number on the screen kept climbing. 238,240. Use it, Elena said firmly. Fight him. Make sure he never does this to anyone else. Maya left the hospital that evening feeling like she was living in someone else's life. The woman in the video, standing in the cold, powerless, dismissed, that was real. This version, where strangers donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to support her, where reporters wanted interviews, where people recognized her in the grocery store. This felt like fiction. But the fight was real enough. Brennan's lawyer released a statement that evening, claiming Maya had been driving recklessly, had failed to provide proper identification, and had behaved aggressively toward a law enforcement officer performing his duties. The statement painted Brennan as a dedicated public servant who'd followed protocol and was now being vilified by a media mob. The internet erupted. Chen called Maya at 9 p.m. Have you seen the statement? Yeah. We're going to shred it, but I need you to stay quiet. No interviews, no social media, nothing. Let them dig their own grave. What if people believe him? They won't. We have video, hospital records, witness testimony from Deputy Morgan, and a patient who's alive because you refused to quit. Brennan's lawyer is throwing mud at a wall and hoping something sticks. It won't. Maya wanted to believe that, but she'd seen too many cases where the truth didn't matter, where the person with power walked away clean while the victim got buried. She'd seen it in the military. She'd seen it in hospitals. She'd seen it on the side of a frozen highway while a man with a badge decided her life meant nothing. Just tell me what you need from me, Maya said. Keep living your life, keep saving patients, be exactly who you are. The rest will take care of itself. The trial date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Maya went back to her routine, 12-hour shifts, trauma cases, teaching residents, grabbing sleep when she could. The media attention faded slightly, replaced by the next outrage, the next viral video. But the anger simmered beneath the surface, waiting. Deputy Jordan Morgan reached out 2 weeks after the incident. She called Maya's personal number. How she got it, Maya didn't ask, and spoke quickly, nervously. Dr. Hartwell, this is Deputy Morgan. From that night. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have pushed back harder. I knew you were telling the truth, and I let Brennan shut me down. Maya was in her kitchen, halfway through a frozen dinner. You tried. Not hard enough. I've been thinking about it every day. If your patient had died, I'd be responsible too. You're not responsible for Brennan's choices. Maybe not, but I could have made different ones. Morgan paused. I'm testifying at the trial. Against him. My union rep says it's career suicide, but I don't care. What he did was wrong, and I'm not covering for him. Maya felt a flicker of respect. That takes guts. So does what you did, staying calm while he tore you apart. I don't know how you did it. Practice. Lots of practice. They talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. Maya finished her dinner and thought about all the small moments of courage that added up to something bigger. Morgan speaking up, Elena starting the fund, Commander Cross pushing for departmental reform. None of it erased what happened, but maybe it meant something anyway. The night before the trial, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through everything that could go wrong. Brennan's lawyer was skilled. The union had resources. There were 12 people on that jury who might decide that a cop following protocol mattered more than a doctor saving lives. At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went for a drive. She ended up on Interstate 77, heading north, retracing the route she'd taken that night. The highway was empty and dark. She pulled onto the shoulder where Brennan had stopped her, turned off the engine, and sat there in the silence. The cold seeped in through the windows. The trees were skeletal against the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Maya closed her eyes and let herself remember the fear, the frustration, the helplessness, the way Brennan had looked at her like she was nothing. Then she thought about Elena's heartbeat on the monitor, steady, strong, alive. She started the car and drove home. When she walked into the courthouse the next morning, she was ready. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Maya sat beside Chen at the defense table, hands folded, face calm. Across the aisle, Brennan sat with his lawyer, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd never lost a case he cared about. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. She looked over the courtroom once, then nodded to the prosecutor. The People versus Daniel Brennan. Are both sides ready? Yes, Your Honor, the prosecutor said. Ready, Your Honor, Brennan's lawyer echoed. Then let's begin. The prosecutor stood, and as she started her opening statement, Maya felt the weight of every eye in the room. This was it. The moment where the truth either mattered or didn't, where justice either happened or died quietly in a system built to protect its own. And somewhere in the back of the courtroom, a phone buzzed with a new message. Then another, and another. Because while the trial was starting, something else was happening online. Something that would change everything before the day was over. But Maya didn't know that yet. She just sat there, watching the prosecutor lay out the case, and waited for her turn to speak. The prosecutor's opening statement was clinical and devastating. Assistant District Attorney Nicole Brenner stood before the jury. 6 men, 6 women, faces carefully neutral, and laid out the case like she was assembling a weapon piece by piece. On the night of March 6th, Dr. Maya Hartwell was racing to save a life. Sergeant Daniel Brennan decided she was lying. That decision nearly killed Elena Cross, and that decision is why we're here today. Brenner clicked a remote. The courtroom's projection screen lit up with a still frame from the video. Maya standing beside her car, hands visible, face calm despite the cold. Brennan's cruiser filled the background, lights spinning. You're going to see this video, all 26 minutes of it. You're going to watch Dr. Hartwell identify herself repeatedly. You're going to watch Sergeant Brennan ignore phone calls from Richmond Memorial Hospital. You're going to watch him search her vehicle, dump her medical credentials on the ground, and mock her when she begged him to verify her identity. Brenner paused, letting the silence stretch. And then you're going to ask yourself one question. Would he have done this to someone who looked different? Brennan's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. Counsel is injecting race into a case about traffic enforcement. Judge Raina Caldwell didn't even glance at him. Overruled. The defendant's conduct is on trial, Mr. Foster. If you don't like the questions it raises, you should have advised your client better. Continue, Ms. Brenner. Foster sat down, jaw tight. Maya kept her face blank, but she felt the shift in the room. The jury leaning forward slightly, the reporters scribbling faster. First blood drawn, and the trial had barely started. Brenner spent the next 40 minutes building her case. She showed the video in full. She displayed Maya's credentials. Hospital ID, medical license, Army discharge papers with honors and commendations. She presented phone records showing 17 calls from Richmond Memorial between 11:52 p.m. and 12:19 a.m. Every one of them ignored. She introduced hospital records documenting Elena Cross's cardiac arrest timeline, the delay, the critical 32-minute window where Maya was detained instead of saving a life. The jury watched it all. Some took notes. Others just stared at the screen, faces hardening with each passing minute. When Brenner finished, Foster stood for his opening. He was good. Maya could see it immediately in the way he moved, the confidence in his voice. He'd probably won 100 cases just like this, defending cops who made bad calls, turning victims into villains. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a split-second decision made by a law enforcement officer during a traffic stop. Sergeant Brennan pulled over a vehicle traveling nearly 100 miles per hour on a frozen highway. He saw someone who claimed to be a doctor but couldn't prove it. He saw someone who became increasingly agitated when asked to follow simple instructions. And he made the decision every officer is trained to make: verify first, trust later. Foster gestured toward Brennan, who sat ramrod straight in a suit that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Sergeant Brennan is a decorated officer with 14 years of exemplary service. He has never been disciplined. He has never been accused of misconduct. And on the night of March 6th, he was doing exactly what his training required, protecting public safety by ensuring that a speeding driver wasn't a threat. Maya felt Chen's hand touch her arm lightly. A warning. Don't react. Don't give them ammunition. Foster continued. The prosecution wants you to believe this is about race, about power, about a rogue cop on a power trip. But the evidence will show something much simpler, a miscommunication that occurred during a high-stress situation. Sergeant Brennan attempted to verify Dr. Hartwell's credentials. He called the hospital, he examined her identification, and when inconsistencies arose, he made the cautious choice. He's lying, Maya whispered to Chen. I know. The jury will too. Just wait. The first witness took the stand an hour later, Dr. Lian Zhao, head of Richmond Memorial's cardiac unit. She wore a navy suit and the expression of someone who'd spent 30 years not suffering fools. The prosecutor walked her through the night in question, the emergency call, the desperate attempts to reach Maya, the cascading crisis as Elena's heart failed repeatedly. How critical was Dr. Hartwell's presence? Brenner asked. Zhao didn't hesitate. Absolutely critical. We had a patient in ventricular fibrillation with massive anterior wall infarction. She'd coded twice. We needed someone who could thread a femoral arterial line under arrest conditions without causing an embolism or further cardiac trauma. Dr. Hartwell is one of 3 people in North Carolina certified in that procedure. Without her, Elena Cross would have died. And you called Dr. Hartwell's phone multiple times. 17 times. No answer. What did you think when she didn't respond? Zhao's face tightened. I thought we'd lost her. Car accident, maybe. Something catastrophic. It never occurred to me that a police officer would detain her and ignore our calls. Foster's cross-examination was sharp. Dr. Zhao, isn't it true that other medical personnel were present that night? Yes. Surgeons? Yes. Cardiologists? Yes. So Dr. Hartwell wasn't the only person who could have helped Mrs. Cross. Zhao's eyes went cold. She was the only person with the specific trauma training required for that insertion under those conditions. If someone else had attempted it, they would have likely perforated the artery or caused a fatal embolism. Mrs. Cross would be dead. But you can't know that for certain. I can, because I'm the one who made the call, and I'm the one who would have had to tell her husband and children that we let her die. Foster moved on quickly, sensing he was losing ground. But the damage was done. The jury had seen Zhao's conviction, heard the medical reality laid bare. The second witness was Deputy Jordan Morgan. She walked to the stand in full uniform, shoulders back, face set. Maya watched her take the oath and wondered what it cost to testify against another officer. Morgan had called her 2 nights ago, voice shaking, saying she'd been getting threats. Anonymous messages telling her she was a traitor, her locker vandalized, other deputies refusing to speak to her. But she was here anyway. The prosecutor took her through the traffic stop, Morgan described arriving on scene, seeing Maya's credentials scattered on the hood, recognizing the military discharge papers and trauma kit. "What did you tell Sergeant Brennan?" Brenner asked. "I told him Dr. Hartwell's story checked out, that we needed to let her go." "And what did he say?" "He told me he was handling it, and to stand down." "Did you believe Dr. Hartwell was telling the truth?" Morgan looked directly at the jury. "Yes, immediately. Everything about her, the gear, the credentials, the way she carried herself, it was obvious she was exactly who she said she was." "Then why didn't you intervene?" Morgan's voice cracked slightly. "Because he was my superior officer, and I was a coward." The courtroom went silent. Even Foster looked surprised. Brenner let the moment hang, then asked quietly, "Are you being a coward now?" "No, ma'am." Foster's cross was brutal. He hammered Morgan on procedure, on chain of command, on whether she'd actually verified Maya's credentials herself or just made assumptions. Morgan held steady, answering each question with the same unflinching honesty. Yes, she'd deferred to rank. Yes, she should have pushed harder. Yes, she was ashamed. By the time she stepped down, half the jury was looking at Brennan like he was something they'd scraped off their shoes. The third witness was Commander Vincent Cross. He took the stand in full dress uniform, medals gleaming. The prosecutor established his credentials: 26 years with Richmond PD, decorated commander, impeccable record. Then she asked him to describe the night his wife nearly died. Cross's voice was steady, but Maya saw his hands grip the armrests. "I received a call at 11:58 p.m. from Richmond Memorial. They told me my wife had collapsed, that she was in cardiac arrest, and that they needed their vascular specialist immediately. I asked if Dr. Hartwell was en route. They said she wasn't answering her phone." "What did you do?" "I drove to the hospital. I called everyone I could think of: dispatch, highway patrol, anyone who might know where she was. At 12:14, I got a call from a state trooper saying a black woman matching Dr. Hartwell's description had been detained on I-77 for speeding." "What was your reaction?" Cross's jaw tightened. "I told them to let her go immediately. They said they were processing the stop. I told them my wife was dying and Dr. Hartwell was the only person who could save her. They said they'd expedite it." "Did they?" "No, I had to drive to the scene myself and physically intervene." "What did you see when you arrived?" "Dr. Hartwell standing in the cold in scrubs, her medical equipment dumped on the ground, Sergeant Brennan leaning against her car like he had all the time in the world, and my wife dying 12 miles away." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Foster didn't even try to cross-examine aggressively. He knew a wounded husband was sympathetic, and anything he said would backfire. Instead, he asked a few procedural questions and sat down quickly. But the damage was apocalyptic. The jury had just heard a police commander describe watching another cop nearly kill his wife through sheer arrogance. The prosecution rested at 4 p.m. Judge Caldwell called a recess until the next morning. Maya walked out of the courthouse into a wall of cameras and shouted questions. Chen steered her through the crowd to a waiting car, ignoring every reporter. Inside the vehicle, Chen exhaled slowly. "That went well?" "Foster's good." "He is. But we're better, and tomorrow, you testify." Maya's stomach dropped. "I know." "You'll be fine. Just tell the truth. Look at the jury. Don't let Foster rattle you. And if he does, then remember you've operated on soldiers while rockets were landing. A lawyer asking questions is nothing." That night, Maya couldn't eat. She sat in her townhouse reviewing Chen's prep notes, running through answers, trying to anticipate every angle Foster might take. Around midnight, her phone rang. Elena Cross. "I'm watching the news," Elena said. "They're saying you're testifying tomorrow." "Yeah." "You're going to be amazing." "I'm terrified." "Good. Terror means you care. Just get up there and tell them what happened. Let them see who you are." Maya closed her eyes. "What if it's not enough?" "It will be, because the truth is on your side, and so am I." They talked for another 20 minutes, and by the time Maya hung up, some of the fear had loosened its grip. She went to bed at 1 a.m. and actually slept. The courtroom was even more packed the next morning. Maya took the stand at 9:15, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. She sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and met the jury's eyes. Brenner started gently. Dr. Hartwell, tell the jury about your background. Maya did. Army service, field surgeon, combat deployments, transition to civilian medicine, certification in advanced trauma procedures. She kept it simple, factual, letting her record speak for itself. And on the night of March 6th, you received an emergency call? Yes. At 11:47 p.m., Richmond Memorial contacted me about a critical cardiac patient. What did you do? I got dressed, grabbed my medical kit, and drove to the hospital as quickly as safely possible. How fast were you driving? Between 85 and 98 miles per hour, depending on road conditions. Were you being reckless? No, I was being urgent. There's a difference. Brenner walked her through the stop. Maya described every moment, the lights, the conversation, the scattered credentials, the ignored phone calls. Her voice stayed level, clinical. She'd given after-action reports before. This was just another one. How did you feel when Sergeant Brennan refused to verify your identity? Frustrated, afraid, powerless. Powerless? I knew someone was dying and I couldn't do anything to help her. That's the worst feeling a doctor can have. Did you raise your voice? Become aggressive? No, I stayed calm and respectful the entire time, even when I wanted to scream. Brenner showed the video again, this time with Maya providing live commentary. The jury watched Maya on the screen, then looked at the real woman sitting in the witness box. The contrast was devastating, the composed professional versus the man who'd treated her like a criminal. When Brenner finished, it was nearly 11 a.m. Judge Caldwell called a 15-minute recess before cross-examination. Chen met Maya outside the courtroom. You're doing great. Foster's going to try to make you look emotional, unreliable, maybe even suggest you're exaggerating. Don't take the bait. I won't. And if he brings up race, he will. Then let him. The jury's already seen what happened. They're not stupid. When they reconvened, Foster stood and buttoned his jacket. He walked to the witness stand slowly, like a predator circling prey. Dr. Hartwell, you were driving nearly 100 miles per hour. Yes. On a frozen highway. Yes. That's dangerous, isn't it? It can be, but I'm a trained driver, the roads were clear, and I was responding to an emergency. An emergency you claim was real. Maya's eyes narrowed. An emergency that was real. Elena Cross nearly died. That's not a claim, that's a fact. Foster smiled thinly. But Sergeant Brennan didn't know that, did he? He would have if he'd verified my credentials, or answered the hospital's calls, or listened to anything I said. You were speeding. You became agitated when stopped. Your identification was legitimate. Military discharge papers don't get faked. Hospital badges don't get altered. And 17 phone calls from a hospital don't happen because someone's making up a story. Foster's smile faded. You're very defensive, Dr. Hartwell. I'm very tired of being called a liar by people who refuse to do their jobs. Chen made a small movement in her peripheral vision. Too much. Pull back. Maya took a breath. Foster seized the opening. You have a history of conflicts with authority, don't you? No. You were reprimanded twice during your military service. Maya felt ice flood her veins. I was commended 43 times and reprimanded twice for minor procedural violations. That's a pretty good ratio. What were those violations? Operating outside established protocols to save lives, which I'd do again. So you admit you don't follow rules when you disagree with them? I follow medical ethics. Sometimes that conflicts with bureaucracy. When it does, I save the patient. Foster paced. On the night in question, you could have simply accepted the ticket and gone to the hospital. Sergeant Brennan wasn't writing a ticket. He was searching my car, questioning my credentials, and wasting time while someone died. You could have called someone else, another doctor. There was no one else. I was the only person in the region qualified for that procedure. Convenient. Maya's hands tightened on the armrests. It's not convenient. It's medical reality. And if you'd spent one day in a trauma unit, you'd understand that. Dr. Hartwell, isn't it possible you overreacted? That you saw a routine traffic stop and turned it into something it wasn't? Is that what the video shows? The video shows a traffic stop that escalated because your client refused to do his job. Foster's face reddened. My client was following procedure. Then your procedure kills people. Judge Caldwell banged her gavel. Dr. Hartwell, answer the questions without editorializing. Maya nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Foster tried a different angle. You're testifying today because you want revenge, aren't you? No, I'm testifying because I want to make sure this doesn't happen to the next doctor or the next patient. You've received substantial media attention, book deals, speaking engagements. I've refused every single one. The crowdfunding campaign raised over $400,000, which is being used for legal fees and donated to medical advocacy groups. I haven't kept a dollar. Foster was floundering now, throwing punches that weren't landing. He tried for another 20 minutes, attacking her timeline, her credentials, her motivations. Maya answered each question with the same calm precision she used in surgery. No wasted movement, no emotion, just facts. Finally, Foster gave up. No further questions. Maya stepped down. Her legs felt like water, but she made it back to her seat without stumbling. Chen squeezed her hand once. You destroyed him, Chen whispered. The defense's case lasted less than a day. Foster called a few character witnesses for Brennan, fellow officers who praised his service, his professionalism. But none of them had been there that night. None of them could explain why he'd ignored 17 hospital calls. Brennan himself didn't testify. Foster probably advised against it. Too risky, too many opportunities for cross-examination to expose the lies. Closing arguments came 2 days later. Brenner stood before the jury and spoke with quiet fury. Sergeant Brennan had a choice that night. He could have verified Dr. Hartwell's credentials. He could have answered the hospital's calls. He could have let her go save a life. Instead, he chose his ego over a dying woman. He chose control over compassion. And he chose to treat a decorated veteran and medical professional like a criminal because she didn't look like someone he was willing to believe. She paused. Elena Cross is alive today because Dr. Hartwell refused to give up, not because of Sergeant Brennan, in spite of him. And that tells you everything you need to know about who belongs in this courtroom and who belongs in prison. Foster's closing was desperate. He talked about the pressures of law enforcement, the split-second decisions, the impossible burden of keeping communities safe. But it rang hollow against the video, against the hospital calls, against Elena Cross's near death. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman, a middle-aged black woman who'd taken notes throughout the entire trial, stood and delivered the verdict. On the charge of obstruction of medical services, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of reckless endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of official misconduct, we find the defendant guilty. Brennan's face went white. Foster closed his eyes. Maya sat frozen, barely breathing. Judge Caldwell thanked the jury and set sentencing for 3 weeks out. Then she looked at Brennan. Mr. Brennan, you abused your authority and nearly caused a death through your negligence and arrogance. You will remain free on bail until sentencing, but understand this. The badge you wore doesn't protect you from consequences. Not anymore. The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted. Reporters flooded the aisles. Cameras flashed. Maya sat perfectly still as the chaos swirled around her, feeling nothing except a vast, echoing emptiness where the fear used to be. Chen was talking, saying something about a press conference, about next steps. Commander Cross was shaking her hand. People were cheering. But Maya was already thinking about the next shift, the next patient, the next emergency where someone's life would hang in the balance and she'd have to hold the line. Because that's what she did. That's who she was. And 3 weeks from now, when Brennan stood before the judge to receive his sentence, Maya would be back in the trauma unit doing the job he'd tried to stop her from doing. Outside the courthouse, her phone lit up with a notification. Not from the news, not from Chen. from an unknown number with a Virginia area code. The message had no words, just a photograph. Maya opened it and felt her blood turn to ice. It was a picture of her townhouse, taken from across the street. Recent. She could see her car in the driveway, the porch light she'd left on that morning. A second message arrived. "You think this is over? You think you won? We're just getting started." Maya stared at the screen as the celebration continued around her, and she realized with perfect, terrible clarity that the trial had been just the beginning. Maya showed the messages to Commander Cross before she even left the courthouse steps. He took one look at the photo of her townhouse, and his face went from celebration to combat mode in under a second. "When did you receive this?" 2 minutes ago. Cross pulled out his phone and made 3 calls in rapid succession. One to Richmond PD's cybercrimes unit, one to courthouse security, and one to someone he only identified as Marcus. Each conversation was clipped, professional, urgent. When he finished, he turned back to Maya. "You're not going home tonight." "I'm not hiding." "You're not being stupid either. Someone just threatened you outside a courthouse full of cops and cameras. That's not amateur hour. That's calculated." He gestured to a black SUV pulling up to the curb. "That's Detective Marcus Webb. He's going to take you somewhere secure while we track down who sent those messages." Maya wanted to argue. She'd faced down Taliban fighters and saved lives in firefights. Anonymous text messages shouldn't scare her. But the photo of her home, the specificity of it, the timing, that wasn't just intimidation. That was reconnaissance. She got in the SUV. Webb was mid-40s, built like someone who'd played college football and never stopped working out. He drove in silence for 10 minutes before speaking. "Commander Cross says you're the one who saved his wife." "I did my job." "He also says you just put away a cop who had a lot of friends in the department." Maya looked at him. "Is that a warning?" "It's context. Brennan's got supporters, some of them loud, some of them quiet. The quiet ones are the ones you need to worry about." "Are you one of them?" Webb met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "I'm the one driving you to a safe house instead of letting you walk into whatever's waiting at your place. That answer your question?" They drove to a nondescript apartment complex in a neighborhood Maya didn't recognize. 3rd floor, corner unit, blinds already drawn. Webb swept the apartment quickly, checking closets, windows, sight lines, then handed her a phone. "Burner. Commander Cross's number is programmed. So is mine. You need anything, you call. You see anything suspicious, you call. You get bored and want to order pizza, you call first." "How long am I staying here?" "Until we find out who sent those messages and neutralize the threat." "And if you don't find them?" Webb's expression didn't change. "We'll find them." He left. Maya stood in the silent apartment, generic furniture, blank walls, the smell of industrial cleaning products, and felt the adrenaline from the trial finally crash. She sat down on the couch and let herself shake. Her real phone buzzed. Chen. "Where are you?" "Safe house. Someone sent me threats." There was a long pause. "Physical threats?" "Surveillance photos. Messages saying it's not over." "I'm coming to you." "You don't know where I am." "Then tell me." Maya gave her the address. Chen arrived 40 minutes later carrying 2 bags of takeout and a laptop. She set everything on the kitchen counter and turned to Maya with the expression of someone preparing for war. "We're filing for a protection order against Brennan and anyone acting on his behalf." "You think it's him?" "I think he's looking at prison time and he's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things." Chen opened her laptop and started typing. "I'm also filing a motion to have his bail revoked. Threatening a witness is a felony. If we can prove he's behind this, you won't. He's too smart to send messages himself. Then we prove he ordered it. Either way, he goes back in custody until sentencing." They worked through the night. Chen drafted motions while Maya gave statements recounting every detail of the messages, the timing, the specific wording. Around midnight, Commander Cross called with an update. "We traced the number. Burner phone purchased with cash 3 days ago at a convenience store in South Richmond. Security footage shows a white male, late 20s, baseball cap, paid cash, and left. We're running facial recognition now. That's not Brennan. No. But it might be someone connected to him. We're also pulling records on known associates, fellow officers who've been vocal about supporting him, anyone who might have reason to intimidate you. How many names are we talking about? Cross hesitated. More than I'd like. Brennan's been on the force 14 years. He's got friends. Some of them are good cops who can't believe he'd do what he did. Some of them are exactly the kind of cops who would. Maya closed her eyes. I just wanted to save a patient. I know, and because you did, you exposed something rotten. Now we have to cut it out. The next morning brought news that cracked the case wide open. The convenience store footage yielded a partial plate number from the vehicle the suspect had arrived in, a gray Ford pickup registered to Officer Kyle Brennan, Daniel Brennan's younger brother. Chen filed an emergency motion before noon. By 2 p.m., Kyle Brennan was in custody, and by 4 p.m., his phone records revealed 53 calls to his brother in the past week, including 2 the day before the trial ended. The last call had lasted 11 minutes and occurred 3 hours before Maya received the threatening messages. Judge Caldwell issued a warrant for Daniel Brennan's arrest that evening. Bail revoked. Remanded to custody pending sentencing. Maya watched it unfold on the news from the safe house. Brennan being led out of his home in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage. His lawyer giving a frantic statement about his client's innocence. Kyle Brennan in a separate perp walk, head down, hands cuffed behind his back. Chen called. It's done. Both of them are locked up. Daniel's looking at additional charges for witness intimidation. Kyle's facing conspiracy, terroristic threats, and probably more once we dig deeper. When can I go home? Give it 48 hours. Let us make sure there aren't others involved. But 48 hours turned into something else entirely when the FBI showed up. Special Agent Tara McKinney arrived at the safe house the next morning unannounced, flanked by 2 other agents and carrying a file thick enough to use as a weapon. She sat down across from Maya and got straight to the point. Dr. Hartwell, how much do you know about Sergeant Brennan's background? Just what was in the trial. Then you don't know he's been under federal investigation for the past 8 months. Maya felt the floor shift beneath her. For what? McKinney opened the file. Pattern of misconduct, excessive force complaints, allegations of racial profiling. We've been building a case, but we didn't have enough to move until your incident went public. Now we do. She spread photographs across the table. Traffic stops, always people of color, always minor violations blown into major confrontations. Some resulted in arrests. Some resulted in violence. All of them followed the same playbook: escalate, humiliate, control. How many? Maya asked quietly. 47 documented incidents over 6 years. Those are just the ones where people filed complaints. We estimate the real number is 3 to 4 times higher. Maya stared at the faces in the photos. Young men, old women, families with children in the back seat. All of them looking at cameras with the same expression: fear, anger, powerlessness. Why didn't anyone stop him? Some tried. Most gave up when their complaints went nowhere. The department protected him, dismissed investigations, buried reports. Until you. McKinney leaned forward. Your case broke it open. The video gave us proof we couldn't ignore. The trial gave us legitimacy. And now we can prosecute him federally for civil rights violations. But we need your cooperation. What kind of cooperation? Testimony before a grand jury, documentation of your experience, and willingness to be the public face of this case when it goes to trial. Maya looked at the photographs again. 47 people who'd been dismissed, ignored, buried. People who'd tried to speak up and been silenced. When do we start? The federal indictment came down 2 weeks later. 17 counts of civil rights violations, conspiracy to obstruct justice, deprivation of rights under color of law. The charging document read like a horror story. Years of systematic abuse, protected by a department more interested in avoiding scandal than stopping a predator. The media coverage was relentless. Every news outlet in the country picked up the story. The video of Maya's traffic stop was analyzed frame by frame. Legal experts debated the case on cable news. Activists held rallies outside the courthouse. And slowly, other victims started coming forward. A 19-year-old college student who'd been pulled over for a broken taillight and strip-searched on the side of the highway. A 56-year-old grandfather arrested for resisting when he asked why he was being stopped. A mother of 3 detained for an hour while her toddler screamed in the back seat, all because Brennan decided her license looked suspicious. Each story added weight to the prosecution's case. Each victim added their voice to a chorus that could no longer be ignored. Maya testified before the grand jury in early April. The proceeding was closed, but Chen briefed her afterward on the reaction: unanimous vote to indict, multiple jurors visibly emotional, one of them asking if they could add more charges. The trial was set for June, federal court this time, with a judge known for handing down maximum sentences and a prosecutor who'd built her career on civil rights cases. But before any of that could happen, the Virginia State Police announced sweeping reforms. Superintendent Wallace held a press conference on a Tuesday afternoon. Maya watched it from Richmond Memorial's break room, surrounded by colleagues who'd insisted she see it live. Wallace stood at a podium flanked by community leaders, civil rights attorneys, and police reform advocates. He looked 10 years older than he had at their first meeting. The events surrounding Dr. Maya Hartwell's detention exposed systemic failures in our department, not isolated incidents, not miscommunication, failures. And we are taking responsibility. He outlined the changes: mandatory body cameras for all traffic stops, immediate verification protocols for medical and emergency personnel, civilian oversight boards with subpoena power, bias training conducted by outside organizations, and a complete review of all complaints filed against officers in the past decade. We failed Dr. Hartwell. We failed the communities we serve. We failed our own standards. That ends today. The press conference lasted 40 minutes. Reporters asked hard questions. Wallace answered them without deflecting. When it ended, Dr. Zhao turned to Maya. "You did that. The system did that. I just refused to disappear." "No, you forced them to see. That's different." Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Elena Cross, watching the press conference. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. "Coffee tomorrow?" They met at a cafe near the hospital, neutral ground, quiet, out of the way. Elena looked healthy now, color back in her face, moving without the careful fragility of someone recently returned from death's door. "How are you feeling?" Maya asked. "Strong? Alive? Grateful?" Elena stirred her coffee. "My cardiologist says I'm healing ahead of schedule. He also says I should be dead, so there's that." "You're not dead because you're stubborn." "I'm not dead because you refuse to quit." Elena set down her spoon. "I wanted to talk to you about something. Vincent and I have been discussing it, and we'd like to establish a foundation, medical advocacy, legal support for healthcare workers who face discrimination or retaliation. We're calling it the Hartwell Initiative." Maya froze. "You can't name it after me." "Why not? You're the reason it exists." "I'm also still processing everything that happened. I don't want to be a symbol." "Too late. You already are." Elena's voice softened. "I know you didn't ask for any of this. You just wanted to do your job. But what you did, what you survived, it means something. And we want to make sure it means something lasting." Maya thought about the photographs McKinney had shown her, the 47 faces, the 3 or 4 times that many who'd never filed complaints, who'd just swallowed the humiliation and moved on. "Okay, but I want input on how it operates, and I want it focused on prevention, not just response. Training, protocol development, making sure the next doctor who gets pulled over doesn't have to fight for 32 minutes to save a life." Elena smiled. "Done." The federal trial began on June 15th. Maya testified on day 3. The courtroom was smaller than the state trial, more formal, filled with FBI agents and federal prosecutors who treated the case like open-heart surgery, precise, methodical, no wasted movement. The prosecutor, a woman named Catherine Ward, walked Maya through her experience again. But this time, the focus was different. Not just what Brennan had done to her, but how it fit into a pattern. How her case was one data point in a constellation of abuse. Ward showed the jury the other traffic stops, played dash cam footage, the ones that hadn't been lost or corrupted. Showed how Brennan used the same tactics, the same language, the same escalation pattern across dozens of encounters. Maya watched the jury's faces harden with each new piece of evidence. These weren't sympathetic locals who might side with a cop. These were federal jurors who'd been selected specifically for their ability to judge the government's own agents. Brennan's defense was anemic. His lawyer, a new one, the expensive one having quietly withdrawn, argued that the stops were legitimate, that Brennan had followed training, that any pattern was coincidence. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all 17 counts. Brennan's sentencing came 3 weeks later. Maya attended, sitting in the gallery beside Elena and Commander Cross. Judge Raymond Porter was a black man in his 60s who'd spent 20 years as a civil rights attorney before being appointed to the bench. He read through Brennan's sentencing report with an expression carved from granite. Mr. Brennan, you took an oath to serve and protect. Instead, you used your badge as a weapon. You targeted vulnerable people because you knew they couldn't fight back. You abused your power systematically, repeatedly, and without remorse. Brennan stood at the defense table, face blank. His lawyer had advised him to show contrition. He couldn't manage it. Porter continued, You nearly caused the death of an innocent woman because of your arrogance and prejudice. You would have succeeded if not for Dr. Hartwell's skill and determination. That alone warrants severe punishment. But your pattern of abuse, the decades of systematic violations, that demand something more. He looked directly at Brennan. You will serve 15 years in federal prison. No parole, no early release. You will never hold a position of public trust again. And you will live with the knowledge that your actions have become a case study in exactly how law enforcement should not operate. The gavel fell. Brennan was led away in handcuffs. His brother Kyle, sentenced separately, had received 8 years for his role in the intimidation campaign. The Virginia State Police had quietly forced 14 other officers into early retirement during the internal review, uncovering a network of cops who'd covered for Brennan or engaged in similar behavior. Maya walked out of the courthouse into summer sunshine. Reporters were there, always there, but she'd learned to navigate them. Brief statement. No questions. Move on. Justice was served today, not just for me, but for every person Sergeant Brennan targeted over the years. I hope this sends a message that no badge is a shield for abuse. She turned to leave, and that's when she saw them, a line of people standing along the courthouse steps, the other victims. 47 faces she'd seen in photographs, now real and present and waiting. One by one, they approached her, shook her hand, thanked her, told her their stories. Some cried. Some just nodded and moved on. But all of them needed her to know that her refusal to be silent had given them permission to speak. The last person in line was the 19-year-old college student, Sarah Martinez, who'd been strip-searched on the highway 2 years ago and had been too terrified to report it until Maya's case went public. I thought I was alone, Sarah said quietly. I thought no one would believe me. Then I saw your video, and I realized maybe they would. Did they? They did. I testified before the grand jury. My case is part of why he's going away. Sarah's voice cracked. Thank you for being brave enough to fight. Maya shook her head. I wasn't brave. I was just stubborn. Same thing, sometimes. By the time Maya made it back to Richmond Memorial, her shift was half over. She changed into scrubs, pulled her hair back, and walked into the trauma unit like she'd done 1,000 times before. Dr. Zhao looked up from a patient chart. Figured you'd skip today. Why would I do that? Because you just watched a man get sentenced to federal prison partially because of your testimony, and most people would need a minute to process that. Maya checked the patient board. I'll process later. Right now, we've got a motorcycle accident incoming, ETA 4 minutes, and I'm guessing they're going to need vascular work. Zhao smiled. Glad you're back. The patient arrived, 26-year-old male, blunt force trauma to the femoral artery, bleeding heavily. Maya scrubbed in, moved to the table, and did exactly what she'd been trained to do. Assess, stabilize, repair, save. The surgery took 3 hours. When it was over, the patient was stable and headed to recovery. Maya stripped off her gloves, washed up, and found Chen waiting in the hallway. "How did you know I'd be here?" "Because you're you." Chen held up her phone. "The Hartwell Initiative just went live. Website, donation portal, advisory board. We've already raised $80,000. Maya leaned against the wall. "I don't know how to feel about having my name on something." "Feel proud. Feel accomplished. Feel whatever you want. But know that people believe in what you did, and they want to support it. What I did was my job. Your job was saving Elena Cross. Everything else, the trial, the testimony, the reform, that was you choosing to fight when you could have walked away." Maya closed her eyes. She was exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that went beyond physical into something deeper and harder to name. But beneath it, she felt something else, a quiet satisfaction. Not pride exactly, just the knowledge that she'd held the line when it mattered. "I'm going home," she said finally. "Actual home? Not a safe house?" "Actual home. They cleared it weeks ago." Maya drove back to her townhouse as the sun set over Richmond. Her street was quiet, familiar, unchanged. She parked in her driveway, walked up to her front door, and stopped when she saw the envelope tucked into the doorframe. No stamp, no return address, just her name written in careful block letters. She opened it slowly, half expecting another threat. Instead, she found a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "Dr. Hartwell, you don't know me. 5 years ago, Brennan pulled me over and made my life hell for an hour because I looked suspicious. I never reported it because I didn't think anyone would care. Then I saw what he did to you, and I realized I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. It happened. I testified before the grand jury last month. Because of you, they believed me. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for not disappearing. Thank you for showing us that fighting back was possible. You saved more than one life that night." The note wasn't signed. Maya read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. She went inside, locked the door, and stood in her living room. Her actual living room, in her actual home, with her actual life slowly reassembling around her. The trial was over. Brennan was in prison. The reforms were in motion. The foundation was launched. She should have felt relief. Victory, even. Instead, she felt the weight of everything that came next. Because the system hadn't changed itself. People had forced it to change. And that meant staying vigilant, staying angry, staying ready to fight the next battle when it came. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. For a second, her pulse spiked. Muscle memory from the threats, from the surveillance, from everything that had tried to break her. She answered anyway. "Dr. Hartwell? Yes?" "This is Sergeant Lisa Torres, Virginia State Police. I just wanted to call and tell you that I've been assigned to the new Medical Emergency Response Unit, the one created because of your case, and I wanted you to know that I take it seriously. What happened to you will never happen on my watch." Maya sat down slowly. "Thank you." "No, thank you. For not letting them bury it. For fighting when it would have been easier to walk away. You made us better." They talked for a few more minutes. Torres explained the new protocols, the training, the oversight. When the call ended, Maya sat in the quiet house and let herself breathe. This was the part they didn't show in movies. Not the victory celebration or the dramatic confrontation, just the slow, steady work of rebuilding, of trusting that the changes would stick, of believing that the fight had been worth it. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. Breaking. Virginia State Police announced first prosecution under new accountability protocols. Officer arrested for excessive force during traffic stop. Body camera footage cited as key evidence. Maya read the article. The officer had been arrested within hours of the incident. The victim, a 17-year-old black teenager, had been released with an apology. The system had worked exactly the way it was supposed to. because someone had forced it to. Maya turned off her phone, walked upstairs, and fell into bed still in her scrubs. She was asleep in seconds, dreamless and deep. When she woke the next morning, the sun was streaming through her window and her phone was ringing. She answered without checking the caller ID. "Dr. Hartwell, this is Special Agent McKinney. We need to talk. There's been a development in Brennan's case. Something we didn't see coming. Can you come to the field office today?" Maya sat up, instantly awake. "What kind of development?" "The kind that changes everything. How soon can you get here?" Maya was at the FBI field office within an hour. Special Agent McKinney met her in the lobby and escorted her to a conference room on the 4th floor, where 3 other agents waited, along with Chen, Commander Cross, and a woman Maya didn't recognize. Mid-50s, sharp suit, the kind of presence that suggested federal prosecutor. McKinney made introductions. "Dr. Hartwell, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Rachel Voss. She's handling an investigation that just intersected with your case in a significant way." Voss stood and shook Maya's hand. "Thank you for coming on short notice. What I'm about to tell you is sensitive, and I need your discretion." "You have it." Voss opened a laptop and turned it toward Maya. On the screen was a spreadsheet, rows and rows of names, dates, case numbers, monetary amounts. Maya scanned it, trying to make sense of the data. "What am I looking at?" "Evidence of a corruption network within the Virginia State Police. We've been investigating for 18 months, traffic stops that resulted in civil asset forfeiture, where the seized property was never properly documented. Money and valuables that disappeared into a black fund. Officers who got paid bonuses for productivity that was actually theft." Maya felt cold spreading through her chest. "How many officers?" 23 that we can prove. Probably more." Voss clicked to another screen, photographs of officers in uniform. Some Maya recognized from news coverage of her case. Others were strangers. And then she saw him. Brennan. Right in the middle. "He wasn't just abusing people because of prejudice," McKinney said quietly. "He was targeting them because they were vulnerable. People who wouldn't fight back. People whose property he could seize without scrutiny." Voss pulled up another file. "In the 6 years before your incident, Brennan personally conducted 473 traffic stops that resulted in asset seizure. He confiscated nearly $2.8 million in cash, vehicles, and property. Less than 30% was ever returned or properly processed through evidence. Where did the rest go? Into pockets, Brennan's, his supervisors, a whole chain of command that benefited from looking the other way." Commander Cross leaned forward, his face hard. "The department knew?" "Some of them knew, some suspected, some actively participated." Voss's voice was ice. "Your case broke it open, Dr. Hartwell. When we started digging into Brennan's record after your trial, we found financial discrepancies. When we dug deeper, we found the pattern. And when we started interviewing his victims, we found a machine designed to exploit the most vulnerable people in Virginia." Maya thought about the photographs McKinney had shown her months ago. 47 faces. She'd thought they were victims of prejudice and power trips. Now she understood they were victims of something more calculated, more predatory. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because we're about to make arrests, 23 officers, 4 supervisors, and we need you to understand that what happened to you wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a system, and that system is about to collapse." The arrests happened at dawn 2 days later. Maya watched it unfold on the news from Richmond Memorial's break room, surrounded by colleagues who'd come in early just to see it. FBI agents in tactical gear executing simultaneous raids across Virginia. Officers being led out of their homes in handcuffs. News helicopters capturing it all. By noon, all 23 officers were in federal custody. By evening, the Virginia State Police Superintendent had resigned, and the governor had announced a complete overhaul of the department. The press conference was held at the state capitol. Governor Michelle Torres stood at a podium flanked by federal prosecutors, civil rights leaders, and families of victims who'd lost property to the corrupt network. "What we've learned over the past 48 hours is unconscionable. A network of officers sworn to protect and serve instead preyed upon the people of Virginia. They used their badges as weapons and their authority as cover for theft. This stops today. Torres outlined the reforms: complete restructuring of the state police, independent oversight, mandatory financial audits for all officers, civilian review boards with subpoena power, and a victim compensation fund totaling $20 million. To every person who was targeted by this network, we failed you. We will make this right. Maya's phone rang. Voss, are you watching? Yes. There's more. We found documentation of Brennan's finances, properties he owned that he couldn't possibly afford on a trooper's salary, offshore accounts, shell companies. He wasn't just part of the network. He was running a significant portion of it. How much did he steal? Personally, north of $4 million over 6 years. We're still tracing it all. Maya closed her eyes. $4 million stolen from people who couldn't fight back. People pulled over for broken taillights or expired tags, who then had their cash seized with no recourse, no documentation, no justice. What happens to him now? Additional federal charges, racketeering, money laundering, organized crime statutes. He's looking at life without parole. Good, Voss paused. There's something else you should know. We found records of bribes paid to judges, prosecutors, and internal affairs investigators. People who were supposed to catch this but were paid to look away. The entire system was compromised. Maya felt something crack inside her. Not despair, but a kind of cold fury that settled deep in her bones. How many complaints were buried? Hundreds, maybe thousands. We're still counting. And the people who filed them? We're reaching out, offering them the chance to testify, to be part of the prosecution, to finally be heard. Maya thought about the note that had been left at her door. The anonymous victim who'd stayed silent for 5 years because they thought no one would care. How many others had given up? How many had swallowed the injustice and moved on because fighting seemed impossible? I want to help. You already have. But if you're offering more, we'll take it. The trials stretched into the fall. Maya testified at 4 separate proceedings: Brennan's expanded federal case, the racketeering conspiracy trial, and 2 civil cases brought by victims seeking compensation. Each time, she told the same story. Each time, juries returned guilty verdicts. Brennan's final sentencing came in October. Judge Porter presided again, his expression even grimmer than before. Mr. Brennan, when I sentenced you in June, I thought I understood the scope of your crimes. I was wrong. You didn't just abuse your authority, you weaponized it. You built a criminal enterprise inside a law enforcement agency and used your badge to terrorize and rob vulnerable people for profit. Brennan stood at the defense table, looking 20 years older than he had 6 months ago. Prison had worn him down to something hollow and defeated. Porter continued, Your original sentence was 15 years. I'm adding 25 years for the racketeering charges, to be served consecutively. You will spend the rest of your life in federal prison. You will never breathe free air again. And every day you spend behind bars, I want you to think about the lives you destroyed for money. The gavel fell. Brennan was led away for the last time. Maya watched him go and felt nothing except a kind of distant satisfaction. Justice wasn't always clean or quick, but it was thorough when it finally arrived. Outside the courthouse, she found a crowd waiting. Not reporters this time. Victims. Dozens of them, holding signs and photographs demanding to be seen. One woman approached, Keisha Williams, who'd had $18,000 seized during a traffic stop 3 years ago. Money she'd saved to buy her first house. Money Brennan claimed was suspicious and never returned. They're giving it back, Keisha said, tears streaming down her face. The compensation fund. They're giving all of it back. I'm getting my money. I'm buying my house. Maya hugged her, this stranger who wasn't a stranger anymore, and felt the weight of it all. The fight, the fear, the months of uncertainty transform into something worth carrying. More people came forward. A father who'd lost his car and his job when Brennan seized his vehicle. A grandmother who'd had her late husband's insurance payout confiscated. A young couple who'd been pulled over on their way to their wedding and humiliated on the roadside while Brennan searched for cash he could steal. All of them with their money returned. All of them with their dignity restored. All of them because one woman had refused to disappear. The Hartwell Initiative officially launched in November. Elena and Commander Cross had assembled a board of medical professionals, civil rights attorneys, and reform advocates. The Foundation's mission was threefold: legal support for healthcare workers facing discrimination, protocol development for law enforcement medical emergency response, and advocacy for victims of police misconduct. Maya attended the launch event at Richmond Memorial's Conference Center. She'd tried to stay in the background. This wasn't about her, she insisted, but Elena had other ideas. "You're speaking," Elena said firmly. "People need to hear from you." "I'm a trauma nurse, not a public speaker." "You're both, and you're the reason we're all here." Maya stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of people, medical professionals and activists and families who'd been touched by the case. She hadn't prepared remarks. She'd planned to wing it. But standing there, seeing all those faces, she understood what they needed to hear. 6 months ago, I was detained on the side of a highway while a patient was dying. I showed my credentials. I explained the emergency. I did everything right, and it didn't matter because the person with power had decided I wasn't worth believing. The room was absolutely silent. I'm standing here today not because I did anything heroic. I just refused to accept that my life, my credentials, my patient's life, that any of it was worth less than one man's ego. And when I fought back, I learned something important. The system doesn't change itself. It changes when we force it to. She paused, gathering her thoughts. This foundation exists because Elena Cross survived, because Commander Cross demanded accountability, because Deputy Morgan testified against another officer, because 47 victims found the courage to speak up, because the FBI did its job, because juries believed the truth. All of those things had to happen for justice to work. And that's the problem. Justice shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't require a viral video and federal investigation and months of trials. It should be the default. Maya looked directly at the cameras recording the event. To every healthcare worker who's been dismissed or delayed or treated like a liar when you're trying to save a life, this foundation is for you. To every person who's been pulled over and humiliated and robbed by people who were supposed to protect you, we see you. And to every officer who's watching this and thinking about abusing your authority, we're watching back now. The cameras are on. The oversight is real. And the next person you target might be the one who brings your whole world down. The applause was deafening. Maya stepped back from the podium, and Elena was there, pulling her into a hug. That was perfect. That was terrifying. Same thing sometimes. The Foundation's first case came 2 weeks later. A paramedic in North Carolina who'd been detained during an emergency response and subsequently fired when she filed a complaint. The Hartwell Initiative provided legal representation, media support, and medical protocol expertise. The case was settled within a month. The paramedic got her job back, the department implemented new protocols, and the officer who detained her was disciplined. It was the first of many. By year's end, the Foundation had handled 37 cases across 6 states. Some were resolved quietly. Others became public battles. But all of them ended with healthcare workers protected and systems forced to change. Maya returned to her life at Richmond Memorial, 12-hour shifts, trauma cases, teaching residents. But now she also spent evenings reviewing case files for the Foundation, weekends speaking at conferences about medical emergency protocols, and spare moments answering emails from people who needed help. It was exhausting. It was overwhelming. It was exactly what she needed to do. One evening in December, she was reviewing a case file in her office when Dr. Zhao knocked on the door. "You're still here?" Maya checked the clock. 9 p.m. "Apparently." "Go home. The cases will still be there tomorrow. So will the patients." Zhao sat down across from her. "You know what I told you when you first joined this unit? I said you were the best trauma nurse I'd ever worked with. I stand by that. But I'm adding something. You're also the most stubborn person I've ever met. And thank God for it, because that stubbornness saved Elena Cross. It exposed Brennan. It broke a corruption network. It changed an entire state's law enforcement system. But Maya, you're allowed to rest. Maya set down the file. I don't know how to rest anymore. Learn, because we need you whole, not burned out. Maya drove home that night through Richmond's winter streets, past the courthouse where she'd testified, past the highway exit where she'd been detained, past all the places that had become landmarks in a story she hadn't asked to be part of. Her townhouse was dark and quiet. She unlocked the door, dropped her bag, and found an envelope on her kitchen counter. She didn't remember seeing it there that morning, but her mind had been elsewhere. Inside was a letter from the Virginia State Police, official letterhead, formal language. She scanned it quickly, expecting another interview request or documentation requirement. Instead, she found an apology. Dear Dr. Hartwell, on behalf of the Virginia State Police, I write to formally apologize for the events of March 6, 2026. Your detention during a medical emergency was unconscionable. The failure to verify your credentials, the dismissal of your expertise, and the delay that nearly cost Elena Cross her life represent failures at every level of our organization. We cannot undo what happened to you. We can only commit to ensuring it never happens again. The reforms implemented in the wake of your case, mandatory verification protocols, body camera requirements, civilian oversight, are now permanent policy. Officers are trained using your case as an example of exactly how not to conduct a traffic stop. Your experience has fundamentally changed how we operate. This letter cannot restore the 32 minutes that were stolen from you. It cannot erase the trauma of being dismissed and humiliated while trying to save a life. But please know that your courage in fighting back has protected countless others who will never face what you faced. You were right to expect better from us. We are working every day to deserve that expectation. With profound respect and regret, Acting Superintendent Maria Santos, Virginia State Police. Maya read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer with the anonymous thank you note, the trial transcripts, and all the other pieces of evidence that this had been real, that it had mattered, that it had changed something fundamental. She made herself dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables, and ate at her kitchen table while scrolling through emails, messages from the foundation, case updates, requests for interviews she'd politely decline, and one message from Special Agent McKinney with a subject line that made her pause. Final numbers. She opened it. Dr. Hartwell. Thought you'd want to know the final accounting. 23 officers convicted, 4 supervisors, 7 judges and prosecutors charged with corruption. Asset forfeiture network completely dismantled. Total funds recovered and returned to victims, $47.3 million. Additional policy changes implemented across Virginia. Mandatory body cameras on all traffic stops, independent oversight boards in all counties, bias training conducted by civilian organizations, and complete overhaul of asset forfeiture procedures. None of this happens without you. Not the investigation, not the trials, not the reforms. You held the line when it would have been easier to walk away, and that made all the difference. The work continues, but tonight, I hope you take a moment to recognize what you accomplished. With gratitude, Special Agent Tara McKinney. Maya set down her phone and looked around her kitchen, ordinary, quiet, unchanged. This was what victory looked like. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a woman sitting alone in her house, eating pasta, reading emails about how a system had been forced to change. She thought about Elena Cross, alive and healthy and planning her daughter's college graduation, about Keisha Williams closing on her first house next month, about the paramedic in North Carolina who got her job back, about Sarah Martinez testifying before a grand jury and finally being believed, about 47 victims who'd spent years thinking they were alone, who now knew they weren't. Her phone rang. Commander Cross. Did you get the email from McKinney? Just read it. $47 million returned. Can you believe that? Maya smiled. I can believe people are capable of stealing it. I can also believe people are capable of getting it back. We're having a celebration dinner next weekend. Elena's insisting you come. She's inviting everyone. The whole legal team, the FBI agents, the victims who testified. She says it's important to mark the victory. I'll be there. Good. Because you're the guest of honor, whether you like it or not. The dinner was held at a restaurant in downtown Richmond. Private room, long table, 30 people who'd been part of the fight in one way or another. Maya arrived expecting awkward small talk and forced celebration. Instead, she found genuine joy. Elena stood and raised her glass. To Dr. Maya Hartwell, who saved my life, who exposed corruption, who refused to be silenced, who showed us that one person with courage can change everything. Everyone drank. Maya felt her face heat with embarrassment and pride in equal measure. Commander Cross stood next. To the system that finally worked. Not because it wanted to, but because good people forced it to. More toasts followed. Voss honoring the victims who testified. McKinney praising the agents who built the case. Chen celebrating the legal team that never backed down. Deputy Morgan thanking Maya for giving her the courage to speak up. When it was Maya's turn, she stood slowly. I'm not good at speeches. I'm better with scalpels than words. But I want to say something to everyone here. What we did over the past 9 months, it wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was work. Hard, exhausting, often terrifying work. And it only succeeded because all of us refused to quit. She looked around the table. Elena, you turned your trauma into advocacy. Commander Cross, you demanded accountability from your own profession. Deputy Morgan, you testified against another officer knowing it might destroy your career. Chen, you fought when I wanted to give up. The victims who came forward, you spoke when staying silent would have been safer. The FBI agents, the prosecutors, the juries, you did your jobs even when it would have been easier to look away. Maya raised her glass. We won, not because we were special, but because we were stubborn. Because we believed that justice mattered more than convenience. And because we refused to accept that power means you can do whatever you want to whoever you want. So here's to stubbornness. Here's to refusing to disappear. And here's to everyone who comes after us, who won't have to fight as hard because we fought first. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Maya sat down, and Elena reached over and squeezed her hand. You changed my life, Elena said quietly. You changed mine too. Maya left the restaurant around midnight and drove home through Richmond's empty streets. She thought about the woman she'd been 9 months ago, exhausted, focused, doing her job without thinking about anything beyond the next patient. She thought about the woman she'd become, still exhausted, still focused, but now carrying the weight of knowing what she could change when she refused to accept the unacceptable. The next morning, she reported for her shift at Richmond Memorial at 7 a.m. Doctor, so handed her a patient file. Motorcycle accident, severe trauma, vascular damage. He's lucky you're here. Maya scrubbed in, approached the operating table, and looked down at the patient, 23 years old, vitals unstable, bleeding heavily. She assessed the damage with the practiced eye of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Let's save him. For the next 4 hours, Maya did what she did best. She repaired the damaged artery, stabilized the patient, and refused to accept that a young man's story should end on a highway at 23. When she finally stepped back from the table, the patient was stable and headed to recovery. She washed up, changed out of her surgical gear, and found a message waiting on her phone. From the Hartwell Initiative. 3 new cases requesting help, a nurse in Tennessee, an EMT in Georgia, a paramedic in Maryland, all of them facing retaliation for speaking up about delayed emergency responses. Maya forwarded the cases to the legal team, made notes for follow-up, and headed back to the trauma unit. Because this was her life now. Saving patients, fighting systems, holding the line between what was and what should be. 3 months later, Maya received a call from the Department of Justice. They were launching a nationwide review of law enforcement medical emergency protocols, and they wanted her input. Not just testimony, they wanted her to help write the standards. She said yes. 6 months after that, she was invited to speak at a national conference on healthcare advocacy. 5,000 medical professionals in attendance, all of them wanting to hear from the nurse who'd exposed corruption and changed an entire state's law enforcement system. She stood on that stage and told them the truth. I'm not a hero. I'm a trauma nurse who got pulled over and refused to accept that my credentials meant nothing. That's it. I didn't plan to change anything. I just refused to let injustice win." She paused, looking out at 5,000 faces. Every single person in this room has the same power I had. The power to refuse, to speak up, to fight back when the system fails. You don't need a viral video. You don't need federal investigators. You just need the stubborn conviction that your work matters, your patients matter, and no badge gives anyone the right to stop you from saving lives. The applause lasted 3 full minutes. 1 year after the night that changed everything, Maya stood on the shoulder of Interstate 77, exactly where Brennan had detained her. She'd driven here deliberately, needing to see it again, needing to close the circle. The highway looked different in daylight, less menacing, just asphalt and guardrails and trees. But she could still feel it, the cold, the helplessness, the 32 minutes that had been stolen from her and nearly cost Elena Cross her life. She pulled out her phone and called Elena. "Where are you?" "The spot where Brennan stopped me." "Why?" "I needed to see it, to remind myself it was real." Elena was quiet for a moment. "And what do you feel?" Maya looked down the highway, toward Richmond Memorial, toward the life she'd saved and the fight she'd won. Proud, angry, grateful, all of it. "Good. Feel it all. You earned it." Maya drove back to Richmond and went straight to the hospital. She had a shift starting in an hour, and there were patients who needed her. That's what she did. That's who she was. But now she was also the woman who'd exposed corruption, who'd forced a system to change, who'd shown thousands of others that fighting back was possible. She walked into Richmond Memorial's trauma unit, pulled on her scrubs, and checked the patient board. Busy night ahead. Multiple emergencies incoming, lives hanging in the balance. Dr. Zhao appeared beside her. "Ready?" Maya looked at the board, at the names and vital signs and urgent flags that meant people were counting on her. Always. She moved through the unit with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was capable of, not just in surgery, not just in saving lives, but in refusing to accept that power meant you could silence people who spoke truth. Somewhere in Virginia, protocols were being followed that hadn't existed a year ago. Body cameras were recording stops that would have been buried. Oversight boards were investigating complaints that would have been dismissed. Healthcare workers were being believed when they said they had emergencies. Victims were getting their money back. Officers who abused their authority were facing consequences. All of it because one woman had been detained on a frozen highway and decided that 32 minutes mattered. Maya Hartwell had been dismissed, delayed, and humiliated. She'd been called a liar by people who were supposed to serve and protect. She'd stood on the side of a road while a patient was dying and felt powerless to stop it. But she hadn't stayed powerless. She'd fought back. She'd exposed the truth. She'd held the line when everyone else wanted to look away. And in the end, she'd won. Not because she was special, not because she was chosen, but because she was stubborn enough to believe that justice mattered, skilled enough to save a life even when someone tried to stop her, and brave enough to keep fighting long after the cameras stopped rolling. The first patient arrived at 8:15 p.m. Cardiac arrest, critical condition, minutes from death. Maya moved to the table, assessed the damage, and got to work. "Stay with me," she said, her hands already moving with surgical precision. "We're not losing you." And they didn't, because that's what Maya Hartwell did. She saved lives. She fought systems. She held the line, and she never, ever disappeared.